We are excited to bring to you UpCycling4ACause by Rob. And this is really different and unique because what Rob does is takes different bicycle parts and makes art out of them. And I can't tell you how many different parts of a bike he uses, but he seems to manage to use the entire bicycle. But not only that, is Rob always pays it forward. His individual business was started as a fundraiser to try to raise money, and he'll talk about that throughout the video. And if you're joining us, we are trying to raise money to offset some of these production costs to put on the summit. As you may know, websites, URLs, they cost money, but all these artisans have banded together to donate their time and energy and the cost for those expenditures to put this on for you. So if you want to kind of pay it forward to not only them, but to other artisans, go check out the page to donate to support artisans. And not only are you donating to support these artisans, but you're also paying it forward because a portion of these donations are going to go to the CNY Arts Restart the Arts Fund. And we have a video coming up later in the week that talks about what CNY Arts is and how it helps the economy. So definitely go check out the website. If you like what you're watching, consider a donation and really help pay it forward to these artisans and other artisans out there. As you're watching this presentation tonight, we encourage you to jot down questions as what you're thinking, or just, maybe you have questions how things are made, and send them to info@bespokeartcraft.com. And on Saturday night, October 23rd, we will go live and we will answer those questions in front of the panel of artists so that you can get those questions answered. So again, have questions, drop us a note at info@bespokeartcraft.com. So definitely get the popcorn, get ready, and let's join us to watch UpCycling4ACause.
Our culture is definitely centered more on cars, right? People will say, oh, that's a beautiful car. They notice cars right away. They don't necessarily see beauty in bicycles. I want to change that. I want to see people appreciate bicycles. They're not just toys for kids and for people that dress in spandex. Like, they are useful and they are works of art. And I think that this is one way that I can sort of subtly change people's perceptions and maybe change their behaviors and get them to ride more bikes, or at least see the cyclists and see the bikes on the road, and make it more of an inclusive society. Probably unbeknownst to most people, there are a lot of different kinds of bike chain, and I'm a connoisseur of bike chains, and some of them work a lot easier, they'll tighten a lot better, and I can do a lot more with them. Some of them just look prettier. The first thing I do is put it in a big tub of soapy water. I'm not sponsored by Dawn in any way, but Dawn soap seems to work really well. It's good for oil spills, so it's good for me. And I put it in here. A lot of times I'll let that sit, maybe overnight. Doesn't get too rusty overnight. But, just to let the soap and everything do its job. And sometimes it gets clean, sometimes it doesn't. And all my stuff is pretty basic. When I started, I was just doing with whatever tools I had on hand. So here I just scrub with a brush. Well, the name of my business is UpCycling4ACause. There's two parts to it. There's upcycling and then there's the cause. Upcycling is a process similar to recycling, but it's actually a step before recycling. So you take old materials, and rather than spending the extra effort and energy into completely destroying the object and recycling it into a new material, you take the objects and you make them into something new, but you retain something about the original object, whether it's the shape or the nature of it. And so I upcycle, and I emphasize the cycle because I'm a cyclist. Sometimes I even upcycle old toothbrushes. If I really want to get in Some of the chains are really bad. Mountain bike chains tend to be real messy. And so I'll just clean them up like that. An old rag, one of our old towels. And just start wiping the stuff off. And it gets pretty, even when it looks clean, there's almost always going to be some grease in there. I don't want to clean this entire chain if I don't have to. It's a lot of work. So what I'll do is cut it to the right length first. So I'm only getting what I need. And to do that, I don't have cable cutter or chain cutters anyway. Instead I use this tool. It's a chain tool for bikes. If you wanted to take the chain off of your bike, this is what you'd use. If you read the fine print of the tool, it says be careful not to over tighten, because that would be bad news for your bike. When I read that, I realized that's exactly what I wanted to do. So if I use this pin and pop out this pin, take off the loose end. This is the tool that many cyclists don't have. Probably most cyclists don't even need. If you were to have to take the bike chain off of your bicycle, this is the tool you would use. It basically has a little pin that will pop out one of the pins that's holding the chain, and then you can take your chain off. I've had one for a long time. I honestly didn't even know how to use it, probably until I started making this art. You know, I was a cyclist for years and years and years and didn't know how to use that chain tool. It was in my emergency kit. So this chain is all floppy. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tighten it up using that same chain tool, but instead of popping the pin all the way out, I just tighten a little bit, tighten a little bit, a little bit. And when I do that, suddenly I can shape it any way I want, and it'll hold. Some chains do better than others. This was a pretty good one. And doing this is a lot like sort of knitting or crocheting. Not exactly the same, but I can sit and I can watch TV or do something else and just sit here and go through the chain. And just tighten the whole thing. Now, if I haven't cleaned the chain yet, then my hands get really, really dirty, which is why I started with the cleaning step. What I'm going to do before I tighten the rest of this is polish it up a little bit, again, sort of to save my hands. And for that, I have one of my other favorite tools, my bench grinder. So I have a grinding wheel on one side, which is for a lot of purposes, usually just to grind down welds or get rid of some really rusty sections. And then the wire wheel, which is to polish up or to clean up the rest of the chain. I learned by doing. I'm not an artist by training at all. My sister was the artist in the family. I mean, I drew, I doodled, but I took my basic art classes in high school and I was done. I appreciate art, but I wasn't trained in it. This started again as a fundraiser. It was out of necessity, honestly. My wife is very, very crafty with her sewing and her embroidery, and so she was selling things that way as a fundraiser. And I felt kind of useless. And then she said, well, you have a lot of junk in the basement you could do something with. And I said, it's not junk, first off. But once I accepted that it was usable material, not junk, I started making simple, again, sort of line art with the bike chain. And so I would make Christmas ornaments. It was Christmas time. So I was making, stars and hearts and snowflakes and things like that, and Christmas wreaths. And really from there I just sort of realized that anything that was a line art, if the line was thick enough, I could replicate it with the bike chain. And so I started doing that, started making the shapes a little more complex, started doing letters, numbers, things like that. I started doing bike chain names, which was really fun because bike chain looks beautiful in cursive, or I guess cursive looks beautiful in bike chain. I started doing things like that, and then I started using other parts of the bike. So I take sort of the whole buffalo approach. I don't like to waste any part. And so, I use the cogs for sun catchers, the chain rings for sun catchers, the bike spokes for everything, whether it's jewelry and bracelets or rings. even the scraps of the pieces that I make. So I make belts out of bike tires, and that uses the tread of the bike tire, but then I've got the sidewalls of the bike tire that are left over, and I don't want to throw it out, and so I started making wreaths out of those. Or the bike chains, if I have to trim part of the bike chain off, I've got a couple of extra links sitting around, and so I'll take those apart, and now I'm making chainmail out of those. Or earrings. I try to use every single piece, and so that no part goes in the trash unless it really just cannot be used. I try to appeal to people's sense of beauty, people's sense of art, and then after they see, so hopefully something pretty, they realize, oh, that's a bike piece. So this is all. Then I check to see if anything's extra floppy. I'll tighten it more. That's pretty good. So now that the chain is nice and tight, I can shape it. I can use my needle nose pliers to do that. These two are my absolute favorites. I hope I never ever lose these. I love these pliers. These needle nose pliers, these red handles. I remember seeing these as a kid. I mean, early 80s. These were in my mom's or my parents' cupboards, and we would borrow them from time to time, and then they'd get mad at us. But when I started doing this, I borrowed them yet again and brought them to my house, and they're still with me. But I don't know how old these are. At least 40 years old, probably older, made in Japan, good solid steel. I've used other needle nose pliers when these got lost, and they just don't work. Like, I've destroyed other tools. These things have resisted everything I've thrown at them. So I do love them. I've got to say that these are the first tools I used when I was starting out, and I made just the ornaments out of bike chains. That was all I was making. I was just selling them on Facebook, even just to friends. And I didn't have any other tools. I didn't know what I was doing. But I used these pliers in ways that should never be used again to make that chain not move, and then to shape it the way I needed to shape it. And I don't know, I was so surprised that I could do it. I was like bending the chain in like these minute ways because they're needle nose pliers. They get in there. It's a little weird. I think I have an obsession with them, but it was so cool, and so I've kept them. I have done my best to hold on to these and make sure my kids don't take them away. And like I said, I've tried other tools, other needle nose pliers, and the quality is not there. They bend when I really need them to hold firm. There's just something about these, and some of the uses I found better tools for the job. But I know that in a pinch, I could always just come back, and I could keep making most of what I make just with 2 needle nose pliers. And that to me is kind of astonishing, because I make a lot of different stuff now. But it's all down to these tools. So this piece by itself it's pretty firm, but it can still open up, and I don't want that. I've found from experience that if it can bend, customers are going to bend it. So I want to hold this thing in place, and so I started welding last year. And I don't have anything fancy. It's just a Chicago Electric from Harbor Freight. It's probably the cheapest welder you can get, but it's a wire welder. It uses electricity, and it does the job I need anyway. And I wear my protective equipment, so I've got a respirator. Even outdoors, probably a good idea to keep a respirator on. I got my welding shield. This was an upgrade. This one automatically turns black when the light comes on, but otherwise I can actually see what I'm doing. This has been a godsend. And then protection for my hands. These are just gloves that we had from the grill, but they do the job too. Welding is something that I have been scared of for years and years and years. I used to justify it saying, well, I wanted to be sort of a purist and not use, electrical stuff. But the honesty here is I was scared. I was scared to weld. I didn't know how. It looks kind of scary, right? It's really hot. You know, the wire welding is using a lot of electricity. And so in 2020, I bit the bullet and I got a welder, and I watched a lot of videos and I taught myself how to weld. I'm not good at it, but I can make welds that hold. But I'm getting a little more creative in it now too. I'm starting to weld like bike rims. Anything that's made out of steel I could weld. And just like so many of my other processes, once I realize what the minimum requirements are and what, I guess, how few limits I really have, I've gotten more creative with how I use it. Alright, so it's all welded in place. And before I dare touch that, I'm going to just cool it off with some water. Just take off those a little bit. I would love to have my name and my artwork spread more in, say, Brooklyn. You know, I would love that. I do dream someday of packing up a whole bunch of stuff and going down to Dumbo and selling at their craft fair. Portland would be another great a great place for me to sell. I'm making inroads. Like, I know people that are giving gifts to people in Portland, so you know, it's getting there. And anytime I sell something on Etsy, I look to see where they are, and I start to see where the bike cultures are, and I try to, anytime I give to one of those places, I give them a couple extra business cards. Just sort of a standard bike frame right now, and if I were to put in just a flat bar, I can make a mountain bike. That's a mountain bike. Or I can curve, and these are all just pieces of bike spoke. So I can curve the bicycle spoke, cut it, and suddenly we have a road bike. And then I'm going to solder that in. Put some flux paste on there. I'm probably not doing this. Anybody that's a good solderer is probably screaming at me. But this works. And you might not be right, but it's not wrong. And then I use solid wire lead-free solder. The lead-free is really important to me. But the fact that I'm using the paste means I don't have to have the flux core. Go. So this is a nice, almost finished piece, but it's unprotected metal. Eventually it could rust. And so what I used to do is I would cover these or coat these with like lacquer or some other store-bought finish. But what I've started doing now in my quest to become as sustainable as possible, I have been using dissolved packing styrofoam as a finish. So all of my products now are coated in polystyrene, but it's from dissolved styrofoam. So I dissolve it instead in a solvent that comes from orange peels. It's just delimiting. And when I dissolve it in there, this is going to take a while because there's a lot of it in there already. It's very saturated. But this styrofoam will just dissolve in and make this somewhat clear gel. And then I can take that clear gel and dip my piece in there. Dip it in. Oops. It would be better if that piece of styrofoam wasn't there. And then slowly let it come out. And then I've got to let a lot of that drip free. And in about 2 to 3 days that will be finished curing. And then I have a nice sealed complete project. I started Upcycling for a Cause as a fundraiser. We hosted a teenager, an orphan from Ukraine, back in Christmas of 2013. Through an organization called New Horizons for Children. They provide bios for orphans in the orphanages there that work sort of like boarding schools. And so during Christmas time or the summertime when the school shuts down, the orphanage shuts down as well. And so these kids have limited options as to where they can go. They don't have usually any family to go to. And so this organization goes in, they interview the kids, and then they try to find host families for them, kind of like a foreign exchange student program, but just during those holidays. And so we hosted a teenage girl, and we fell in love with her, and then we ended up pursuing adoption through a different organization, but we pursued adoption in 2014. And so both the hosting and the adoption, we had to come up with money for flying and for other fees, and so this was sort of a fundraiser for that. Once all of those fees ended up being covered, I still, at that point, I'd gotten the bug. I really loved making art, and so I wanted to continue doing it, but I felt called really to continue helping other kids have a chance, and so I donate 25% of my profits to New Horizons so that other kids can have a chance to be hosted. The other organization is World Bicycle Relief, and I only started donating to them about a year ago, but I have felt so connected to that organization for a while. They provide bicycles and bicycle infrastructure to developing countries, primarily to women and children, so that the children can, say, get to school, continue their education. Women can, get to villages, they can get to the markets, they can simply get around, and so it decreases their travel time, increases their productivity, increases their safety in a lot of cases, and they also provide infrastructure in training people in country to maintain and fix these bikes. Alright. And then I would probably just do a little glue in there, but it actually fits pretty well on its own. So now you've got
video. If you want to support Rob, there's two things you could do. One, check out his Instagram page. He has lots of pictures of his past projects. He'd love to have you follow him on it. Second, if you're interested in purchasing a piece of Rob's original work, go to his Etsy store, UpCycling4ACause, and he'll give you 10% off now till the end of the year using the code word Bespoke. Again, 10% off now between now and the end of the year for using the code word Bespoke. So the holidays are coming up. Maybe you have a bike enthusiast in your life that you really love, that would love something like this. Or maybe somebody who's more mechanically inclined and likes tinkering. Definitely go check out his page. He's got ornaments, he can do names, he can do sun textures. Just give him a call, tell him what you're looking for, and he can help get you that Christmas present, Hanukkah present, Kwanzaa present, whatever present you're looking for. And definitely think about it for the upcoming holidays. And if you're watching us during the week, I encourage you to come back tomorrow to watch ceramics. And what she does is she makes really cool outdoor garden sculptures, all by hand. And it's not only that, but the colors she uses, the way she got started, her impact on trying to pay it forward to others. Definitely come back and check out her larger-than-life garden sculptures.